Welcome back, Poggers, to a special Round 1 wrap episode of the Pog State. I'm Atlus, and I'm joined by all of these lovely people as we try to break down exactly what happened in Round 1. Now, Round 1 was a weird round. We had top teams from Spring not necessarily doing so well, and bottom teams from Spring also doing quite well. So, we're trying to figure out exactly what happened, and thankfully, I have the best experts in the business in order to do it. Now, this was going to be difficult, right? Because we have a lot of teams, don't have all that much time. So I thought, much to the chagrin of a lot of people, that what we could do is a speed round on every single team, where we try and give 2 cents on each team in 15 seconds each, going around the table. Now, I understand this is going to be difficult for the person going last if what they had was something that somebody else said. However, I think
that's why it's fun.
I think it might be hilarious watching everyone struggle. And I am, because this was my idea, going to always go last. So let's see what we can do. So as of now, here is the standings. This is where all the teams are. What we're going to do is go through it in order, and we're just going to get, a few seconds of thoughts from everyone. And we'll start from the top. So, Wolf, Gen.G.
All right, Gen.G. Consistent, predictable, probably going to Worlds, best bot lane in the LCK. There you go.
I think Gen.G have shown a lot of development over the course of this split in terms of how well they look even in their losses, but I don't know if they have broken the Gen.G barrier of actually losing when it really matters.
That's what I was going to say.
Got you!
Oh no! Oh, I'm totally lost.
So I think Gen.G is a team that you're always worried they're going to kind of let you down. And right now they got 7 wins, and it was like, this is the time where they're not going to let you down. And then now they got 2 losses against 2 big teams, and it's like already the walls are starting to shake. Who knows where the consistency is, and maybe we just got to wait for their playoff buff, because maybe that's all they got left.
Yeah. I guess moving on to me, Gen.G have got their losses out of the way early, and I think that's fantastic. They had a really, really good spring split in 2020, and what that did was made us feel like they were going to be good in the playoffs. Now, they've dropped the ball early, and maybe they'll be able to pick it up and get through the playoffs. So basically, it's still the same Gen.G. All right, moving on. Damwon, Kia. And we'll start with you,
Yeah,
Mr.
we can change the
Chronicler.
starter.
I think Damwon Kia have taken the much-needed break. If we cast our minds back to the beginning of spring, I said I think they might have a couple of rough first weeks and then look incredible, and now they're looking incredible.
Yeah, I think they did roster swaps, but a little bit better, realizing early on that it's probably not going to work, and they gave the Ghosts the time they needed, and I think they'll be ready in time for when it's necessary at Worlds.
For round 2, just going to have to find that consistency, because right now, we are seeing a Damwon Kia that is starting to come back together, starting to come back online, and I think the break they took was actually the right choice, looking back at it now based on their current performance.
Yep. I think that they took the roster swap medicine. They took the hangover cure. They had a pretty rough start, but that's to be expected after the only team that actually had to do anything in the offseason, and now looking real good. Shout-outs to Khan, just being a beast up there towards the top side. Okay. Next one.
Noodle Boys.
The Noodles. All right.
Noodle Boys.
Let's hit some noodles. All right. Nongshim. Valdes.
Yeah, I mean, imagine a team that started with only a strong bottom lane, and now all of a sudden that strength is spreading to the rest of the team, and they're kind of ramping up into playoffs. I mean, how can you not get excited about the Noodle Boys?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's all about Gory. You could see how much just slotting in one great player and removing one player that was your weak link can actually completely turn around your entire performance. And yeah, all 5 positions look much more upgraded as a result. Peanut's looking good. Totally different Nongshim from spring.
I personally really love the Rich Renaissance, where his power on like one specific pick is kind of spread around. I still think he has a little bit more up and downs than you'd like as Nongshim, but seeing him have the dominant performance that he used to have on champions like Aatrox and other champions like Gwen and Viego is really, really good.
Yeah. I think Nongshim have really upgraded with the addition of Gori. I think Bay moving down was like the best roster swap that we had throughout the entirety of Summer. So that was absolute genius. I'm not sold on them being necessarily a top 3 team yet. However, they are performing better. Just got to work on that consistency, especially, like Chronicler said, up towards the top side of the map. And now, Afrika.
So Afrika, Keen, looking really good. This is something we know he has the potential to actually hit. He did not hit it in spring. He's peak Keen right now. And Dread, also looking very good when he's not playing Gwen. Another topic for another time. But yeah, Afrika, I'm very excited how they're playing the early game. Disappointed dad.
Chronicler.
And their bot lane looks really good at the moment. Leo has brought a lot of stability into that roster that it really needed.
Yeah, I think they're a strong team. I just don't believe that they should be sitting at 4th. Like, they're really being carried by Keen, and even though they did have some consistency, even Fly is kind of moving up a bit. I'm just kind of waiting for if Keen can't pop off against a good team.
I think Afrika have the best hold on the meta right now of any team that we have in the LCK. I think they're playing out early game comps much better. They ignored the pseudo Rumble nerfs and decided that he was still good and absolutely trash teams with it. I've been really impressed. Fly's also playing much better. And Afrika, I don't know, they've got a soft spot in my heart these days. Feeling like they're doing some good stuff. Anyway, let's move on to T1.
T1 has gone through a bit of a up and down, and I am happy to see that in the recent couple of series we've seen them refine their aggressiveness, because I think that the reasons why we're disappointed in this team is because you look at the names and you're like, they can definitely play well enough to match the aggression, and then the aggression wasn't there, and now it's getting there.
Yeah, I think T1 is a team that will always kind of struggle with the immense amount of pressure that they have on them from the fans and their expectations, but I think they're slowly on their way up towards playoffs. I'm just worried a little bit about that top lane still.
Yeah.
For me, it's just about figuring out how T1 is going to actually improve their comms and their shot calling, because there's clearly some disconnects between the mid lane and other parts of the map. And if they can fix that, which it looks like they're working towards, as Mal mentioned, I think they've got a good playoff run ahead of them.
Yeah, I think it's weird. T1 go from the team that makes the most swaps and the most changes in their roster in spring to the team that doesn't make the roster changes that seem pretty obvious and easy here in summer, until they make one that confuses everyone based on Teddy's performance. I assume that that's to do with the Ziggs, but I'm digressing. I think that T1 could have been a little bit more aggressive with moving players that aren't performing out and other ones in. But what can you do? All right. Live Sandbox, everyone's favorite romantic team. Valdes?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to get romantic about this team. When you see that the way that they're taking wins, it feels like everybody's kind of getting hyped around them. I hope that they can stay consistent and not just be a worse version of Afrika, because the potential is really there.
For me, they're a romantic team, but they broke my heart because I feel like they were on the up and up and they have fallen down a little bit. But I think what's really unique about Live Sandbox is they're one of the only teams in the LCK right now that's actually focused on late game a lot of the time. Like, a lot of teams are focused on snowball. Live Sandbox can get ahead and can snowball, but a lot of their drafts are late game focused with the Gnar that we're seeing, the Ezreal. I think that's pretty interesting. Pretty romantic, if you will. They broke my heart.
Live Sandbox strike me as a very emotional team in that we have seen players like Fade play incredibly well the entire game and then make one big misplay at the end. I think if they can maintain the performance that they have when they're not under pressure and spread that out to all parts of the game, that they're going to be a top contender playoffs team.
Yeah, my take is a bit similar. I think that Summit's a bit more consistent than he was last season. I feel like Fate is coming into his own as a player. I think Croco is a bit more consistent as well. The bottom lane has always been solid, but I just feel like we keep talking about this consistency thing, and Live Sandbox just don't quite have it yet. They have enough of it to give them top 6, I think, but they don't have enough of it to really break into the top of the LCK. Okay, everyone's favorite, rollercoasterless KT.
The first problem with KT this season was that they changed their logo. The second problem after that was, of course, that they were unable to win their game threes. And they look really strong in the early game. They look really strong in the early parts of the series, but it feels like there's almost like some sort of fatigue with this roster where they can't actually maintain their form throughout a longer series. And if they make playoffs, which isn't even a given, I'm worried about how they're going to do in best of fives. That's my biggest concern for them right now.
I think the solo lanes of KT are actually absolutely insane. I think that their bot lane, while having a lot of problems, is showing the fact that they are a challenger bot lane, and in some of the high pressure situations, they are not able to actually match up, which is similar to problems that the Freak had previous split, where like in clutch moments just doesn't work out. And once they can fix that, I think they'll look a lot better.
Yeah, kind of similar thoughts. I think the bottom lane, I'm worried about them in terms of the amount of pressure that they can take as a very young bottom lane. I'm really not convinced down there, whereas Blank has been decently consistent. Can he play against the top junglers? I'm not sure. I think Dove is really coming into his own, and Doran's kind of always been insane, and I think those two are going to have to do the majority of the carrying.
Yeah, I think my take is that Doran's finally the player that everyone wanted him to be in spring. I think Dove is a surprise. I think a lot of people thought that Yukao was going to be the ace card for this team, but he's just been absent, and Dove has been super good, and that's cool. I think that Noah and Harp, I think their honeymoon phase is over. I think that they are starting to get their, you're starting to see their rookie colors coming out, and they need to try and iron that out. And I think Blank has always had a monkey on his shoulder, and he needs to get it off, because he gets a lot of pressure from his time in T1, and he just needs to realize he's not on that team anymore, and he should just play with some reckless abandon. And now it's time for Hanwha Life Esports. Chronicler?
The early season was really bad, and it was everyone. Except Deft, actually. I think Deft had a great early split, but now the whole team has found themselves again. I think they have the exact same issues that they had in spring, but Deft is looking reinvigorated. Their recent matches, the individual performances are better. Still think they're too inconsistent to actually make it very high in playoffs.
Yeah, I think they're going to sit kind of exactly where they were in spring. I think that Chovy will eventually start making better decisions in team fights, and he and Deft and Vista will just have to carry, and if that can't happen, they'll just sit at fourth again.
Yeah, I'm just honestly really disappointed with Hanwha Life so far this season. They are starting to bring it together a little bit, but with the talent that they have, the coaching staff they have, like, it should be better, and I think fans should expect better, and I'm hoping that we do go back to spring, as you guys say, but I'm not sold yet.
Yeah, it's weird because I feel like we have to ignore their loss to Damwon Kia because that's not part of round one, and therefore I think that Hanwha Life Esports are looking way, way better. I think that they have shown the potential to be able to take down our top teams. However, whether they look better than their spring version, I'm not sure, because they look better than inting their way through most of round one. Valdes, if you could take us through Fred at Brion.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's just the reincarnation of Janair, except they're a bit better.
Yaharong's not even playing. Oh, no.
He's still on the roster. Yeah, I think that Umpty is one of the most inconsistent junglers we have, and that really hurts them. When he's on, they take wins against great teams, and if they can't match the top teams, which they always match the team they're playing against, this is something that everybody said. I don't want to take away your point, Wolf, because you say it all the time.
I was going to say it, no!
You can say it again. I won't take that away from you. It's just like, can they just be consistent and have consistent jungling is really my question.
Like I said on the broadcast recently, I think that this is a team that we might look back at their performance this year, 1 year from now, maybe 2 years from now, and if the team stays together, go, okay, we knew the potential was there. We knew this team could play extremely high-level League of Legends. It's the consistency, like you mentioned, that isn't there. And they've got to start playing like they are an elite team and not trying to play just to beat their opponents.
My heart is too small for the amount of love I have for Fred at Brion. But unfortunately, when it comes to actually playing, especially in the current meta, they're just unmatched. Their entire early game hinges on whether Umpty does well. But I think that if it was a different meta where the mid to late game was more important, their team fights look way better than a team of their standings.
Yeah, I think that Fred at Brion, the reason why we love them so much is because this team is extraordinarily emotional. And if they're doing well, that momentum and that emotional energy is really powerful for them. And if they make mistakes, they collapse completely. and I think it's a little bit sad. I do think that Lava is up this performance. I think that their bottom lane is impressive, and I think that they have been able to play some early games well, but I don't know whether it's enough to give them consistency, because to be consistent, you need to be a robot. And so now, I guess, we'll talk about DRX.
DRX have shattered their entire roster. I think this round is the best way to think about DRX in this round is actually remembering the immense amount of pressure the players were under and actually just feeling really bad about it. Don't know what else to say because this is not a memorable round. There's not a lot of good to say. You're just looking forward towards the future. Okay, round 2,
Yeah,
new
I think
roster.
you're good.
Thank you for your time.
DRX is just a reminder of the importance of challengers and why you should watch it, because their bot lane that has been called up does decently well.
Shameless plug.
And I think if we don't get
You can catch 'em on.
yeah
On TV
no.
Yeah.
If we don't if revamping your entire roster doesn't do it, I don't know what does.
I think it's just all kind of collapsed in round 1. We're kind of even seeing the shell of Kingen and Pioshik, and that's really sad to me. But I'm hopeful for the future with people actually being called up from challengers. I think there is a good chance that things will change in round 2.
Not quite Sonic Boom. Okay, so now that you've got a good grasp on all of these teams and a bit of an idea about, some points about each, what we're going to do is try and make this a little bit more about what we want to see from mostly our middle of the pack teams to try and get them towards the top. Because I think that consistency has been a word that's been flowing around throughout a lot of our teams, but what do we need them to change in order to get good? And so I guess we'll start with just on the tippy top of the middle of the pack. I want to talk about some noodles to start it off. And I guess we'll include a Freaka, T1, and Live Sandbox in this sort of conversation about what we want to see as far as changes for a lot of our teams. And I think Nongshim, I don't know, man. I believed in them at the beginning of this season, but I feel like they're going back to their Nongshimmy ways.
Yeah.
I think it's like not as bad as DRX last split, but it's a little bit of a DRX situation where I think their current standing does not reflect how good the team is. I think the team is way better than they were last split, but at the same time, I think they need to step it up if they want to maintain the current spot that they have.
Yeah.
Yeah, specifically for me, I want to see more depth out of Rich, because what's happening right now is he's losing lane almost every game and then popping off in team fights later on, being the carry for his team oftentimes. What happens if he just plays more carefully in the lane, or actually doesn't throw and wins the lane and has better items and then has those carry performances later?
We saw that one game where he won lane, right? That Jace game, and it was
there
like,
a game?
holy crap!
Yeah, I remember that
He
game.
won a lane, and it was against Keen, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's
it
like-
was Jace versus. Was it
It's
Jace
a winning
versus
matchup,
Gwen?
I think
Might
Gwen,
be
yeah.
Gwen,
Yeah, it was Jace
probably
versus Gwen, which is not too bad. Plus, it's one of the champions that he can play. But watching Rich play when he won lane was
When he's
just
ahead.
insane.
You know what's kind of funny is that after that game, I think Jace has pretty much been banned in every game except the T1 one. It's like teams are just like, no, if Rich can win lane against Keen, this champion should not exist. We should not allow this to happen ever. But yeah, I'm pretty optimistic about Nongshim actually. I
really?
think that I think that the fact that Rich is doing anything is great news. Not to really
backhanded optimism. I've
yeah,
ever heard.
not really to criticize him too much, but honestly, especially in spring, I mean, he was pretty much non-existent. But now that he's actually doing things, and they have Gory, and one of the best bottom lanes in the LCK, and Pino's consistent, I think this team is really coming along, and it's almost like people are still not ready to commit to believing in them yet. But I feel like I'm an early, what is it called?
Early adopter.
Early adopter of the noodles right now.
it's
He's
So
on the Nongshim beta right now.
It's
I'm
early,
an alpha tester.
it's early adapter, not adopter, because I don't think he's going to actually adopt Nongshim, right?
Well, I mean, that depends on if he
that-
gets custody or not. If the agency decides. That
I mean,
he's
I'm
worthy.
open to it.
I feel like
Reach
Valdes
out.
is going to be able to he's going to be able to make the YouTube video talking about how he managed to make $1 million in just a week or something like that. You just need to
Yeah.
invest in Shin Ramyun. You know? And everything's
see
gonna
that
be
happening.
fine.
It's great
I
ramen.
think
Actually,
Pino-
if you had have invested in Shin Ramyun 4 years ago, you'd be extraordinarily rich.
yeah.
or like
Yeah.
100 years ago. I just want to say,
Wait, did
like,
it exist? I don't think so.
Before we go into this a little bit too deep, I just want to say I think Peanut's playstyle has evolved a lot actually this season. He's played a lot more passively. Felt like last season he was just trying to carry no matter what, and to great success or to very poor results. It was very like two-sided. But this season, because Gory is way better than Bay, he has a lot less pressure, and he just plays very carefully and plays more around team fights than ganks. And I think that you could see like this evolved, mature Peanut that's looking really good for Nongshim. I think that's something that we haven't talked about enough, but you could definitely feel a change.
Yeah, I think to summarize, it's exactly what I was just about to say, which was in spring, their mid-jungle was Peanut, and now their mid-jungle is Peanut and Gory. So it's like it's like by himself, Peanut used to be Fred at Brion, where he had so much pressure on him, and when he was performing well, he was doing really well, right? Because he was able to carry that momentum around the map, and if he collapsed, everything would just go to shit. But now he's able to actually just be a jungler, and it's really cool.
Yeah.
I've been enjoying watching Peanut flourish. Do we want to talk about Afrika now? Because I kind of want to end this sort of section on an upswing. So maybe we should talk about some of the more downer swings, with possibly a bit of a T1 discussion. I'm feeling pretty good about what I have to say about T1, and that is more consistent roster, less consistent League of Legends.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of just Danny has, and I know Danny loves himself, and he does a lot of interviews, which is actually great because it's the first time I feel like in a really long time we've had like a lot of information about how T1's coaching is working. Koma was pretty silent and would not actually give a lot of answers during the SK Telecom T1 era. But because Danny's done a lot of interviews, you can actually see kind of into at least Danny's version of the story of what's going on within T1, and he's basically consistently said like, we had these comms problems where shot calling was a little bit of an issue. We fixed it in scrims, but then we went back to bad habits when we went in game. And I mean, when you look at the players that are on T1, the same issues we had last season with the two rosters is there's got to be massive egos on this team. Whether they don't look, whether you could see it externally or not, there's a lot of communication problems because everyone's like, no, I know better, right? And that has to be solved at some point. And I think we're starting to see the beginnings of that here as we head into round 2. But I think that if they can fix their comms issues, we know how great these players are individually. And that's just the story of T1 is like, work together, make it happen.
I completely agree with you. I think there's too many chefs in the kitchen a lot of the time. And when you're talking about egos and things like this, I think ego is incredibly important if you want to be competitive. Because that's what gives you the drive, that's what gives you the motivation. However, if you've got too many of them in a team sport, you're screwed. So how do you balance it, and how do you sort of adjust? And I think it comes into a bigger discussion about the importance of sports psychologists when it comes to esports. But still, I don't know how, I don't know the extent of how this is happening in T1, but I know that it can be a massive problem.
It's funny because this happens in Western teams a lot. This usually doesn't happen in Korean teams. This is a big issue in Western teams where like the egos actually control things, and sometimes the players don't listen to the coaches because like, well, I'm higher elo than you, and you don't actually get to tell me what I can do, and it's very rare to see this in a Korean team.
Yeah, but now we're really reading into a lot of the mental. I'd rather talk about the gameplay a little bit because I think it's very ironic, Max, that you mention the egos, which I think is fair, and then you bring in someone who very clearly shows in interviews that he has very high opinion of himself in Gumayushi, and suddenly everything was way better. No, in Gumayushi, because like in his interviews, he's like, I wanted to stomp ruler, not just on Ziggs, but Ziggs was open, so we had to pick it.
I mean, ego's very different when it comes to I can smash you in lane with my sick mechanics, and I know this game better than you. Do what I say.
And I'm not coming to Rift Herald. I'm staying in lane.
Yeah.
Like I'm not going to.
You're talking about the good ego for winning games. I'm talking about the bad ego for
calling,
for destroying teams.
I still agree with you. I just thought it was a funny.
I think it proves the point beautifully, right? That you need ego to win, but it can also, if manifested poorly, lead to massive problems.
My criticism of T1 is that obviously, like, it's a little bit early because we've only seen one series of this. Because it felt to me like in that series where Guma's coming instead of Teddy, Guma. Interestingly enough, is a less resource-intensive player than Teddy. I think Teddy asks a lot more from his team. At least if you look how they play the game when they have Teddy in there, right? Like, he asks more. And what we saw now was T1 just playing through Kana for 2 games.
Are we reading too much into this when Guma played Ziggs?
Well, no, game? But like I think it will be the same in other picks, because I think what T1 showed was they basically comped Kana with 2 compositions for 2 games, and it solved the issue of Kana being inconsistent. But it's also worrying to me because it does feel like not just Ziggs. But
is that about having a Ziggs lane that's very
I don't
easy
think it's just
to
Ziggs.
sit and wave clear?
It's hard to know right now.
That's
but
the point,
But I
yeah.
do kind of tend to, based on what we saw from Gamusi even last season, agree with you. Like, even when he was playing Aphelios, like, he was given very few resources, still kind of popped off. I tend to agree. Last season's a lot more difficult to judge with all the swaps, but
I'd rather just see them swap out Kana for Zeus. I've been very outspoken about that because I think that Kana, if he needs this amount of attention to pop off, then it will make you very one-dimensional in terms of what you can bring.
I'm very much on the same boat with you, Chronicler. I just makes you wonder, like, what is going on? Like, what is Zeus's current form? Like, is he actually good enough? Because, again, there's a lot of stuff we don't see. There's a chance that in scrims, like, Kana's just consistently outperforming him. He's just the better top laner, and that's the thing. Like, you got to perform on the real stage as well, and so far we haven't really seen that. And T1, it's like a couple of their losses, they're like winning so hard and then they drop the ball just because of some, unfortunate shot calls and team fights. But like the map they won, the 2 maps, the 2 games.
maps.
Oh God, StarCraft casters.
It's your fault.
It's all because of Wolf, actually.
Yeah.
He put it in my head, and now it's in my head,
And also,
too.
you're the one that casted with him in StarCraft like 7-8 years ago, you bastard.
Like, the two games they won against Gen.G, they were winning so hard that you don't really have to make as many calls, I feel. It's kind of like, oh, we're just going to smack them with our wallets, right? It's like, okay, we don't really have to make the hard decisions. Whereas it's like, oh, this team in a really tough late game scenario, like, we can kind of mess up. So that win against Gen.G, while it feels really great, I'm still a little bit worried that in closer matches and in high stakes matches, a lot of that ego clashing will come to, a more obvious point. And that's kind of worrying because, again, the skill is there, but if you can't make decisions as a team, you're just not going to succeed in best of 5s.
Yeah, I got a weird take about this one. Because I think what you're talking about Gen.G is really relevant because that's the game that we saw Gumushi come in. Gen.G failed to ban Ziggs 2 games in a row, and I think that's why they lost. I actually think that pick is completely broken.
100% win rate.
It's disgusting.
100% win rate.
And so therefore,
Should not be left open.
I think that I don't think we've learned anything about the bottom lane whatsoever. I think that what we've learned is that they don't want to run Teddy when there's awesome dudes in the meta because they lack that flexibility. Teddy's always shown that he's not necessarily that guy. We remember the Sona situation.
It's already out of my mind. I forgot about it
Well,
immediately.
that's really
Erased.
good because for me that's always been sitting there in the back of my mind. I'm like, if there's non-AD carry picks in the bottom lane, Teddy's just going to have another mind explosion and it's not going to be great. But the thing that's really cool is that they can bring Gumushi in for metas like this and have that sort of flexibility. And then if they want to mix it up mid-series, they can sub Teddy back in as well. I think that it's a skill set thing. I think Zeus should be playing top lane. I don't know what they're doing. I think Canna is just... Yeah, he's worse than he was, and
we don't know how well Zeus is performing internally. So I think
it's hard to say.
It's hard to assume that he's better just because of how well he played last season. So I
think
would
it's
like
worth
to see it
giving
tried.
it a try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't have the
agree.
info.
We're all on the same page there. Please give him a
it a go.
shot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because maybe even if he's less consistent in scrims, maybe he steps it up for the real thing, whereas Kana's the opposite, kind of.
Yeah.
Because we know his high highs, like Kana is an insane player, but if he can't do it consistently, like what good is it really?
This will have to be called the T1 segment, like in terms in the timestamps for the
Yeah.
Pog State, because I'm like, we're going a little bit long on this one as we always do.
Yeah, we are definitely doing it again.
There's a
So
lot to
let's move on. Let's talk about a team that is probably the most lovable, or at least romantic is not. That's not a word
We
for
skipped
lovable.
Afrika.
We are skipping Afrika until I want to talk about Afrika. We're going to talk about Sandbox first.
Okay.
Because I think that Afrika bridges towards the top of the standings quite effectively. Because I think that Afrika's drafting style is the future of the LCK. I think it's beautiful.
Okay. And we
I
can
love
disagree when we
everything
get there,
about
but let's talk about Sandbox. I'm
Yeah,
down.
I think Sandbox is a really interesting team because they're 6th, right? They're not necessarily a team that are doing super well, but we have been pretty hyped on this squad. I think they've found victories where it's unexpected, and they've done things that we've enjoyed, but they haven't necessarily been able to string enough wins together. How are we feeling about the good old Sandbox?
We've seen so many like highlight moments from this team. The highs are so high that it feels like, oh my god, this team is it. Like, this is the one that's going to break into top 4. This could be one of the bottom teams that goes to Worlds, like, if they can perform well. But they just don't do it every time. And then the times they lose, they still look okay. But the times they win, they look so good. I mean, that's why the romance meme is a thing, right? They're an aggressive team. They play a very different style from everybody else. They play fun League of Legends, and, like, you really want them to be good. Like, that's how I feel, at least. Like, I look at this team, and I'm like, this is a team that is going to do so well. If it can fix its problems, it's going to get so many fans. It's a team that's like a good team to be excited about. It has a huge sponsor, right, in KB Bank. Like, I'm like looking at this team thinking this could be a team that really changes the way people look at the LCK even. And so that's why I'm so excited for them. And when they fail, I'm like, oh, sad dad, you know, like.
Sad dad.
I love Live Sandbox, but I think they have three big weaknesses that they need to fix. Their drafting style is very one-dimensional, so you know what they're going to do. And
The drafting style hasn't changed since 2019.
Yeah.
I said that on the cast with Wolf.
Yeah.
Or with
Yeah, no,
Mal, I think. It's 2 days ago.
They've been the same. Yeah. So that's one thing, which I think that's fine, because even when they draft differently, they still play the same way. So I'm okay with that. But the other two are...
It's like a chicken or the egg thing.
Yeah, exactly. They clearly don't... this ties into the second point. They clearly don't know how to play from behind. I think Croco and Fate are really good examples of this. Well, if they die twice, like if Canyon dies twice, you're still looking at the team fights and go like, I don't know about this. But with Croco and Fate, I think they will then not kind of recuperate. And that ties into my final point, which is Live Sandbox to me is a team that is 80% there towards a good team. And then if they get the last 20%, I think they will like instantly become one of the top 4 or 5 teams very consistently. But if I look at like plays where Fade on Renection plays an incredible game for like 30 minutes and then he makes one play and they lose the game off of that. Like that happened multiple times with with multiple of the Live Sandbox players. And once they can get that fixed, like that discipline, I think they're an incredible team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been really impressed by their bottom lane. I think that I do agree with pretty much everything you said, Chronicler. I think that if they could just widen or broaden their style, I think a little bit, it would really help them. But I think that Prince and Effort being just really, really fantastic right now, especially Effort in my mind. I think he's really jumped up the standings in terms of supports. Like, having that lane just be consistent is really helping them, because in the past it was kind of like, well, I hope Summit pops off with Croco, who literally just camps his lane. If that doesn't work, we get behind early and then we lose. So I think they've added some extra win conditions, and that's really good to see. And Effort's making a lot of plays early. And we were talking in our series where it's like, okay, Afrika against Sandbox, whoever wins in the first 10 minutes is going to win the game. And then that actually happened, even though we did have that crazy banger third game that went all the way to like 45 minutes. But still, the team that was winning in the first 10 minutes won the game. So actually, I think that was the first match of round 2. But
Yeah.
It was, but I think
But people
we
have
can
seen
sneak
that
that
by the
one in
time
there.
this comes out. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
True. But yeah, like I'm impressed by their bot line, and I only have good thoughts about Sandbox if they can broaden their style a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because they're the team with 0 game score right now. So they're technically sort of our benchmark, our middle of the pack, 100% type team. Yeah. And I'm so happy that Effort playing good League of Legends, it's literally the only thing that changed on this team between spring and summer. Effort being good has brought them from the depths of hell to like actually just chilling. And so now you get the rest of the team to step up, and you've got a team that's like vying for top spots in playoffs, and that's all that needed to change. And we knew Effort had it in him. He just didn't do it in spring at all.
I think what's really cool about this team is that they have 2 ways of playing. Like, they are extremely good at early game, but they can also play extremely good late game. And it's not one-dimensional like Afrika, where Afrika is like only the early game. If you're playing a carry champion, not looking so good, right? And I think that's what their biggest strength is that they can play both styles very well. And I think that gives them a lot of flexibility, which is, I think, going to give them longevity in a best of 5 if they do make those playoffs.
Yeah. And I guess we have to talk about Prince as well.
His Ezreal is...
Ezreal's insane.
I think he lost his first game of it recently, but he was otherwise like 5-0 for a long time.
That was because of the Divine Sunder and nerf. Let's be real.
I mean, if you want to, because that was the game, the third game against Afrika that we talked about. I think if he went full damage
that
there,
was so sad for Prince.
Maybe, because he was definitely not the problem that one. I want to see Princess Samira again, because we casted that final game of spring. Yes, I think Samira's really...
I don't want to see Samira
Samira's
again.
really underrated at the moment. I think the champion is actually bonkers.
Are we getting Rahel? You're getting Rahel in there?
Maybe.
We're getting into the Samira meta?
I don't want to see Samira.
I like currently,
after what we had to cast yesterday, I'm pretty...
I think I'm a little bit jaded after yesterday's game.
I think that might be true. But, I mean, I think Samira is a coin flip of a champion, and I don't know whether we want to be promoting coin flipping because we do it enough already. What are we thinking? Is that sort of what gets into your brain? Or is Noah just
I'm a
completely ruined
Ziggs
the
player,
champion
so
for
I don't want to see any Samira.
Ruins
Actually,
the
that's
spot.
the real root of my indignation against this.
I just want to see Prince play more late game carry type scaling champions. I want to see him play Jinx. Ziggs would be great. We haven't seen that yet, but hey, I'll take it.
So now I guess we can talk about some Afrika, who it's going to be really difficult because that Sandbox series was like so epic, but it was in round 2, so I guess technically we shouldn't be talking about it, but I think we want to.
We're talking about
so
the
we're
future right
going
now,
to.
so I think it's okay.
Yeah, and I guess maybe this is our glimpse into the future of Afrika. I have a weird. I don't know what happened, and we've had multiple discussions about this, but I'm just a huge Afrika fan. As of like the last few days, I don't know. I can't stop. I can't stop getting more and more excited about Afrika.
Yeah, it's hard not to get romantic after that last series we saw.
But it wasn't Sandbox that was romantic. It's
yeah,
like,
no, it was Afrika.
Yeah, I know. It's like they booted out my other girlfriend and like they've taken sole
They
position.
took the throne.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But you guys aren't as ready to get on the hype train as I am.
I'm not ready. Like I think they have a lot of work to do in terms of late game because, like you said, I think I completely agree with you. You kind of hinted at this earlier. I don't know if that's in the recording or not, but you said, at some point that you thought Afrika have one of the best handlings of what is this new meta that we have in the LCK. I think a lot of that is... Need water? This is why I got this. A lot of that is based around early game control, snowballing the game, right? And I think Afrika are great at that, but I think that you can't do that every time, and it becomes so predictable that when you do hit 30-minute mark, like you have to shore up that part of the game, and I think they're so weak at the late game.
I think that is irrelevant if you just win the game first. And that
doesn't always happen.
No, but it doesn't always happen. However, in an ideal scenario for the way that Afrika drafts, and also for the aggressiveness that they display in the earlier game, they set themselves up for victories at that time.
I actually think Afrika's late game has been very steadily improving ever since they got Leo on their roster. I think Leo, even though he's not a hard carry in traditional sense, has become such a source of stability because his positioning is really good. It kind of reminds me of what Ghost did for Damwon, where his addition has freed up Lahens. He won't die. He won't take stupid 1v1s, He's just always ready to kind of sit there and be fine. And I actually think that Afrika, I don't think their late game is bad. I think their mid game when they're behind is bad. And then they get into a position where they can't win the late game. But I think if they get in the late game on relatively even footing, the individual talent of players like Keen and Dread is just so absurd that they can just single-handedly carry games. And now that Fly is less of a liability, I actually think Afrika have a lot more longevity than they did. And that in addition to the fact that they play the early game like some of the best that we've seen out of any of our teams in the current meta is really big.
Yeah. You're not as much of a lover, Valdes. You're being very quiet over here.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think me and Chronicler cast a series that's probably going to stay in our minds for a very long time because of that third game. And a lot of it was basically just Keen and Dread like hard carrying the late game on some really overtuned champions right now. So I don't know. I'm still more romantic about Live Sandbox. I think that Afrika still have to prove a lot more. I think they're very inconsistent in the mid to late game, and I think Fly right now he's looking better, but I feel like also the current champion meta for the mid lane is very good for him because he can kind of just like play Renekton or Set or like some kind of bruisery thing that he's going to have a hard time losing lane and inting on, and that really helps them for right now. But how long is that going to last? I'm not really sure.
I want to I clarify what I mean by like their late game. I mostly mean like Drake's 3 and 4 and Baron control. Like these are the places where I think Afrika really struggle to actually set up vision correctly, get in proper priority position. Like if they have prio, they don't get in position quickly enough to actually start the Baron first and then try to be able to set up a turn. That's where I think the decision-making problems come through. I think the carry performances from these players you guys are mentioning is 100% there. And sometimes they win despite their poor positioning because those players are so good. But if they could just shore up getting around that vision control, getting around these Baron pits better, removing vision, threatening Barons, like making decisions like that, I think their late game will be so much better because mechanically, yeah, they're absolutely there.
Yeah. The thing that sort of drawn me to Afrika recently is the fact that they're playing to their drafts really nicely. They're not getting spooked by trends that we've seen as well. And I guess maybe I'm like, because it might be recency bias, but seeing Afrika just say, well, you nerfed Scrap Shield a little bit, I think that Rumble's still Rumble, guys. And then just came in and crushed with the champion, demonstrated that obviously it wasn't enough of a nerf to take off a little bit of movement speed from a shield and a bit of a cooldown. So maybe that's, adding to my bias. But I think that like the way Afrika are sort of building team compositions and then playing towards them is really impressive to me. And I think that what that does is helps with, I don't know, dealing with a lot of the issues that Fly has, right? Because a lot of the time, you want to scale up your mid laner and all this sort of stuff, and he can do that, right? But now he's got early game tools that he has in this, Renekton and et cetera, et cetera. I think that we are going to see more control mages come back into the meta as well. So I don't think that he's necessarily going to get outdated as quickly, just with how I'm feeling like the meta is going to go. Because like as soon as you see a lot of this early aggression, then you get a lot of picks that come in that are saying no to aggression and then counteract that with like stuff like the Lissandra that we've already seen. Yeah. Malzahar's gonna come back.
Rise is also back already.
Yeah, Rise is back. I don't know whether like because of Rise's range and things like this. I think that Rise
playing Morgana.
Yep. I think that Morgana could even just come into the mid lane, because
sure.
I don't know. I think that maybe we are going to see a bit of a Fly playstyle renaissance, which is
it's good for Afrika.
It is definitely good for Afrika. And look, Oriana's never left, right? But they just don't have to pick her anymore. She was the only thing that he could play.
I mean, I also think that Oriana is just not she's okay, but she's not.
Right? I don't think. I think you're absolutely right. But it's for Fly.
Yeah,
for Fly at the beginning of the season, that was all he could win on.
True.
Yeah, so let's delve down just a little bit, shall we? And have a look towards the lower end. I'm going to ignore DRX completely. Because I just don't think that they're going to qualify for playoffs. And
I think that's the basic thing. Like they have to win like 65 to 70% of their games in order to make it now, and that just doesn't seem realistic.
Yeah, I mean, we might see cool performance coming out from Taeyun and John and Jet. Like that, I think that's the main takeaway. Like how the play is going to look. But I think in terms of relevancy, they're not really going to have any.
They might be able to make a Worlds Gauntlet run. That is true. They might be able to do that.
They
do have
points.
They have some championship points, and so therefore, if we get very similar teams getting into playoffs, then they almost are guaranteed to be in that gauntlet.
Everybody can use DRX as a jumping point to make sure that they get that free point, like when they go round robin. I mean, it also means that it's a team that you can often experiment against, depending on how they do. If they end up,
but also
better,
it's now they're like a big blue shell because now losing to DRX
really
feels
bad.
Real bad.
Like if you lose to DRX, it could cost you your plaffs because almost no one else is going to lose to them, right? So
and so all of our Reddit Brian fans are now all very sad.
No, you love them despite what the results. Results don't matter.
I mean that is true. However,
you love them because they lose mostly, but then beat the good teams.
It's like they are a blue shell, and yet they did just get massively blue shelled by the blue team, which
blue
is
shell
DRX.
where you're like in nine.
It's like blue on this paper as well.
I guess blue shelled is when I guess it's about the good old team that is losing.
Yeah.
Against the team that's winning a lot.
It gets some carts on the way to first place.
Yeah,
okay.
but okay. This is how it makes sense, right? the first 8 players have all finished the race.
There you
Fred, bring on. They're on like
They're
lap
the first
2
place
out of 3.
team now.
They're lap 2 out of 3. And DRX are constantly falling off Rainbow Road on lap 1 over and over again. And they haven't been able to figure it out. And now they get a blue shell and they throw it, and it hits the team in 9th.
Yep.
Because, of course,
perfect.
Only team
unfortunately,
left.
they're the only one that's still on the racetrack.
That's the
Everybody
best
else
way,
has got the
yeah.
next. Yeah. I'm really curious about what your opinion is on KT and Harmon Life Esports, because these two teams, KT especially could be a team worth talking about, but they haven't really shown us much of that.
They're kind of what a freak out somewhat, or not a freak out, maybe more. It's hard. Like their solo lanes are really, really good. I think Blank generally is decent. I think Noah and Harp in laning phase are okay, but I think the honeymoon was very appropriate. Like when you just come into the league, you still have a lot of bravado, and you're like, we're gonna make this.
Yeah.
And KT looked incredible in the first couple of weeks. And then I think once you get your first losses, that's where the inexperience really starts to seep through. And that's the problem with KT now. It just doesn't really come together. And that's something that's really hard to fix.
There's a lot of fatigue, I think, that's happening because some of these games they play really long. They don't end up performing well throughout the entirety of game 3s. It feels like early game to late. And it's actually, if I think about it, like it's now Hirai, I think 11th year of coaching since he was a StarCraft 2 coach, like back in 2010. He's been through a ton of League of Legends teams up to now. And when I see Hirai on stage when he's behind his team, like. He's been smiling a little bit. At the beginning of the season, he was actually pretty happy, generally speaking. But the last few games, he's looked really frustrated. You could feel the frustration on the players' faces. And I think KT themselves know that they are a better team than their results show. And it's frustrating that they can't prove it every time. And I think it's a mental hurdle you have to somehow get over as the coaching staff, as all these individual players, especially somebody like Doran, right? Who's like, I'm doing well every time. Like, this is never my fault, right? Like, you have to somehow get over this hurdle. And I don't know when that's going to happen because we know this team is better than it shows. Like, we know it too. Like, you can see it. It's kind of the opposite of Honor Life. Like, they started off really well, and they've kind of been like, oh, now they're not winning. Whereas Honor Life, it's like, oh, they're good, but they're not winning. Now they're winning. It's kind of they've crossed paths in that regard.
We saw the match yesterday just on the Doran topic. It's like he's trying to win so hard that he just proxies the wave in the top lane 3 games in a row.
Yeah.
I actually think that is a really cool
That's a really
strat.
cool strat. That's like the new thing.
Let's call it the Doran from now on. I like it.
Yeah.
It's like whoever's winning the lane gets to walk behind the turret and then get a free
and you have
recall.
your jungle winning as well.
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it also depends on because like
And the
he did it
matchup.
with Nocturne very well, right? But like
You
there's
need a
also
lot of wave
champions.
clear as well.
Yeah,
He was
exactly.
playing Gwen and
He
Nocturne.
did it with Gwen
Yeah.
as well, you're right? Yeah.
It's basically just use snip, and then you just get out of there before you're really in danger.
Like
Yeah.
I think Viego,
But
for
every time
example,
Blank is
behind-
also in there invading the jungle
Yeah.
at the same time and gets the
using the prio.
He had
Really
double
nice.
control ward when he was on red side in the enemy blue jungle. That really helps as well. Like,
Yeah, it was a really cool
yeah,
strat.
it was just I
Blank
totally
has it
agree.
too,
The
so.
solo
And
laners
he
are
has
trying
to,
so
right? Yeah.
hard
Yeah.
to just be an amazing team by themselves, and like the rest of the team is decent, but like their indicator score really says it. Like they're +1, but they're 4-6. Like,
Yeah.
how can you be positive but also have a losing record?
And Hanwha, a team that we probably should talk about just briefly next because Chovy's popping off again, getting
Yeah.
pentakills on Akali and looking real good.
Also deft. Yes.
Also, Deft is having a really great season.
Depth
I
is
also,
still looking great.
yeah,
It's
I think that Arthur's had some good games and some shockers. I think that, like, I don't know, Arthur's either on
He's
or
an
he's
enigma.
just not. He's just
Some what faces.
yeah, some real flippy stuff going on. I think that they still need to sort out, what's happening on the top side of the map. I'm not impressed by Dudu. Wasn't really
Morgan-
impressed by Morgan coming back either.
Yeah, I mean that was a really bad matchup he had to play. Like I don't want to judge that game too harshly because I actually think Morgan is really good. I'm sad we don't see enough of him.
I think he's good in a tank meta, but we just don't really have a tank meta, and
Yeah.
they're trying to
It's-
force
we're
the
getting
tank
there.
meta.
Put him on Ornn.
It's coming back. It's coming back. Anathema's changed, guys.
Just
It's
let
happening.
him play Ornn.
I really want there to be a bug on New Mundo so that people can't pick it.
Yeah, can we just delete that champion?
Does anyone think Gen.G is stronger than Damwon Kia right now?
Hell no!
Because I think they might be, actually. I think that Damwon Kia has played very greedy. Like, that's... Again, we're talking about round 2 in this one moment, but the series that Damwon played against Hanwha Life, like, they showed some big holes in their decision-making, rotating around the map. I think Gen.G is smart. They draft well. They had one inconsistent performance against Damwon Kia. Okay. Damwon Kia had, like, the best series of their tournament so far that day. I think Gen.G might actually be better than Damwon Kia right now.
I think they're on a similar level, but I think Damwon Kia has already shown us that they can like kind of get rid of the shackles that are holding them back, with Barrel like completely reinvigorating himself over the course of a split, right? With their holiday very clearly working out.
It's and the Barrel Summer buff.
Yeah, and I think Gen.G just I think Gen.G
Barrel's
is
second
still
round of Summer buff.
Still maybe.
Yeah.
It just came online a little bit slower. Anyway.
I mean, yeah, because it ties in like as you said very nicely, Damwon Kia. Yeah, you know, they were the only team that actually had to do anything in the offseason, so of course they're gonna have to kind of recuperate that. But I think that the problem with Gen.G, even though I think they're still the most likely team, because I think they're really good. I think the most likely team to make finals against Damwon Kia.
Finals?
Yeah, I still think so, and it might be wrong, right? It might be an upsurging
Not Live
T1
Sandbox.
or a Live Sandbox or a Nongshim. Like all of these things, we don't really know because we got to get closer to the end. But I think like the problem with Gen.G is just they still haven't shown us that they can really get rid of, you always call it the monkey on the back, the shackles that are holding these players back. And
Their anathemas chains.
yeah.
Oh god.
Perfect. Yeah, Gen.G just perpetually gets anathemas changed when it really matters, and I think they're going to have a really easy road to playoffs. I think they're going to look really good, and then when push comes to shove, they can't break that barrier.
Yep. Yeah, that's
really all.
That's why it's really sad.
Yeah, even if they are the better team, like I suggest at the moment, just like in this,
No,
in terms of the
I
round
think
robin,
that's not a
I think they will still
bad
lose the
take.
finals to Damwon Kia, given current form, because it's the finals. There's too much pressure. They can't handle it. I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
It'd be so
We're looking
cool
a
if they
bit,
did.
a bit far to the future, but I mean that's what we're predicting to see. In
I
the
just
finals.
don't see it happening. But like it'd be such a, because on so many levels, this team is just their own worst enemy. Because they're so much better than how we often see them play.
They are a second place team.
Yep.
I guess we can move on to Damwon Kia and what has made us feel better about this team as the round has moved on, I guess we should say. Because they did lose, once again, to Fred at Breon. They made their crazy roster swaps to give Ghost a bit of time off. They've even brought Rahel up to potentially play in Ghost's position, although we haven't seen that just yet. This is a team, I think that they are getting back towards their Worlds form. I don't want to jump on that hype train just yet. There were a lot of people after their match against Gen.G saying that Damwon Kia is back. I don't think that they're necessarily there yet, but I think that they can be by the time we get to the end of
There's one
playoffs.
thing that's really worrying for me for Damwon is that in the past, when they won Worlds, everybody was pretty consistent, including Ghost, and he was like very reliable AD carry. I feel like that gap has widened a bit. I feel like every other player is playing even better. Like Khan is insane right now. He's like actually mind blowing.
Canyon right now.
Yeah, I mean we're getting towards that, and Canyon is really insane.
When are we going to revisit that conversation about the Nogari Khan and which one was more valuable for Damwon Kia?
At Worlds, inevitably, when
Worlds.
Remember when everyone's going to be
every other region judges Khan again.
in Kesper Cup, I said like he could be an upgrade.
Because like
and it was a bold statement, but
my brain's going towards where Nogari currently sits on FPX, and it's not playing League of Legends very much.
but
I think that is a complicated one to make.
No, I know,
'cause
but
it's, yeah.
I don't want to.
research
I'm
is
not
all
opening.
Pog State episode.
I'm not opening. I'm not opening the can of worms. However,
But, no, but
it's
Khan,
feeling juicy.
Khan has looked insane, and we were all of us were like going as MSI. People were like Khan is actually just a bad tank. Once we were like, no, he's not, and it's happy to see again that that's not the case.
his Scion's only his fourth most played of all time.
The real kicker, of course, is Barrel. Because I do agree, I don't think Ghost has recuperated yet. I don't know if he will.
Yeah.
That's really
just the
a
ending
big
of my
question.
point was just like there are 4 players that are getting even better, and Ghost, I think he had some time off, and he's still kind of like I think he got worse now, and now it's
that's
not
interesting.
like from spring, but just I think he hasn't really improved much at all,
I think
and
he's
everybody
got
else
back
is
in his
getting
own
very
head a little
everybody
bit as
else
well.
is very much so much better, and I feel like he's getting left behind, and maybe that's affecting his play.
I think Damwon Kia are still overconfident. I think that the hangover is not completely worn off from winning Worlds, and they were not challenged in spring, as we saw. I mean, almost undefeated, ended up going undefeated through playoffs. But I think that in summer they've been challenged a little bit more, but sometimes they still don't play like they are playing against opponents that are really good. Like they don't play like, okay, they play like they're 7-0 in a game when they're actually like 1-2, and they're making rotations top like they have better items when they don't.
Yeah, I think that makes them better.
I agree.
until they overextend and they lose.
Well,
No,
yeah,
but they often
But they
overextend
win
and they
anyway.
win.
yeah.
That's the thing. That's what makes it the dumb one factor
It's
is
like-
that they can make what look like errors, but
they're not
they
as
win.
perfect as the golden boy, the golden team of LCK should be, right? Like
Right.
It's
Okay.
like-
So
it's
it's
like
not
a
like
little
it's not the gold standard of what the classic macro. We can
the
win a
classic-
game
yeah,
at
the classic-
0-0.
The classic world's champions from Korea over the years were like cleaner than this, which is worrying to me.
Like
But the
the
League of
only-
Legends isn't clean anymore.
Yeah,
we
like
don't have trackers
the
now.
entire meta is mayhem. Like every region is like dropping weird games left and right. G2, I mean, they're a bit on the upswing now, but they looked horrible. Mad Lions is losing. Misfits is losing.
Is
I
Rogue
mean, we
the
don't
new
even talk
LEC
about the
champion?
LCS. But I think that the only a team that has looked better than current Damwon in like the last 3-4 years from Korea is 2020 Damwon. Ironically, because 2020 Damwon was the team that you're talking about, but not through macro. But that was actually it was this early game, but then even better. Like
Yeah.
it was literally they take control from minute one, and you never get the opportunity to play the video game. And I think they're getting back to that, which is to me a very good sign.
But I think, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for this episode of the Pog State. Thank you so much for watching. I hope it wasn't too rambly, but we are very passionate about our LCK teams. So much passion! And we just really wanted to share basically an info dump of all of our thoughts and feelings about how the LCK is going. I think it has a bright future. I think that we haven't been all doom and gloom, and there have been episodes where we've been a little bit more doom and gloom about the state of the LCK. Now,
I haven't.
halfway. Well, that's true, but you are
I mean, yeah.
perpetual optimist, and that's why we love you.
And hate me.
No, it's just why we don't necessarily share all of your opinions. We don't hate you at all. Don't worry about it. But thank you so much for watching, guys. If you can, leave a like and subscribe and do all that fun stuff. If you were listening to the audio version, you could also leave reviews and do all that cool stuff as well. And I know there's a lot of places that you can consume that. But that's going to be it from us. Thank you so much. Take it easy, Poggers, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks for the next episode of the Pog State. Yeah.
Stop waving in my camera, Valdes. God.